All rise. District Court of San Andreas is in session. Honorable Judge York presiding and Judge White co-presiding.
All right, you may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. All right, we are here today for San Andreas versus Farrah Finneghan and Jebediah Walker. The charges against Stephen Thumb have been dropped at this time. I'm sure Mr. Thumb is very grateful for that.
Yes.
Give us a big old yes.
Yes, ma'am.
That's right. There we go. All right. So for the record, this is case number 21-15762. And I'm just going to ask prosecution and defense, are all your witnesses available and here?
Your Honor, it's my understanding, as far as the state, Officer Sullivan nor Officer Barnes are present.
All right. I do have a notice here from Mr. Sullivan. He is currently deployed on active service. God bless him, defending our and helping our wonderful country. I will give you 1 second to maybe have an officer call to see if Mr. Barnes is on duty. Defense, is everyone here?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. If there is an officer here, would you mind finding out if Mr. Barnes is here? If not, we will be continuing and Mr. Barnes will be dealt with after the service for not showing or letting anyone know that he was not coming.
Your Honor, I will note for the court that I did make several 301 calls to try and get Mr. Barnes down here, as well as it doesn't appear that he's on duty from what I can tell. But if an officer could try and make contact, that would be appreciated.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Just give me 1 second to get my paperwork ready. All right, ladies and gentlemen, court is now in session. This is a criminal case. I'm going to ask for the prosecution just to read a statement and for the charges against the two individuals.
Yes, Your Honor. As charged, the defendants Farrah Finneghan as well as Jebediah Walker are both charged with possession of possession of controlled dangerous substances with the intent to traffic. As far as Mr. Walker, he is charged with possession of marijuana from 10 to 19 bags, as well as Ms. Finneghan possession of over 19 bags. Both are charged with sale of controlled dangerous substances.
All right, and Mr. Vanderburg, how do your clients plead?
Not guilty, Your Honor, for both.
All right, so both Mr. and both Farrah and Jebediah entering a not guilty plea. All right, we will begin the court. Prosecution, your opening statement, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. And now, we're going to hear a fairly simple case today. Overall, the evidence, fortunately not testimony, but mainly the evidence that will be provided and presented to this court will show that on the morning of August 24th, around 1:30 in the morning, it'll be shown how both defendants were essentially selling drugs up in Sandy Shores. Now, it's shown that Officer Sullivan responded to some 911 calls that were put in by several locals in the area that essentially, pretty briefly, stated that there were individuals in the area handing off suspicious packages others in the area. Now, Officer Sullivan, as well as Officer Barnes, ended up responding to those 911 calls. And they noticed that the defendants, both Ms. Finneghan as well as Mr. Walker, were present in the area, handing what looked to be packages to individuals passing by. They knew immediately from their training that this more than likely was a drug sale or was illicit activity. So they, of course, did what they were supposed to do through their training. They secured the area. They then went back from more 911 calls stating that, again, these handoffs were still happening. Of course, at which point they attempted to detain both of the defendants and then, of course, found drugs on their person. Now, again, through the actual handoffs that were witnessed by both officers, as well as the marijuana that was found on both of the defendants, it will be shown beyond a reasonable doubt that both defendants are guilty as charged. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Vanderburg.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your opening statement, sir.
Yes, Your Honor. May I walk freely, Your Honor?
Of course.
All right. Your Honor and people of the court, today we're going to be here to defend the circumstances that brought my two clients here. My two clients are hard workers. They do what they can to survive and earn a living in this city, honestly. Today we're going to be arguing the circumstances that brought them here based on the unusual and assumption, I wouldn't say assumptive, basically in a way that one officer's visual supposed visual expertise of being an owl, of having eyes like an owl, to be able to witness my two clients supposedly doing handoffs in the dark, and then just keep watching them. And we're going to find out in this situation that there was no proof that would have brought them to this area. Because, of course, in all the evidence, there's no 911 call that would have brought the officers out there. Today, it's just going to more or less look like that one officer was more or less stalking my clients, as he may have been just a bored officer wandering out in the roads just to find something to do. Despite the situation here, we're going to point out that the evidence they gathered had no circumstance or had no probable cause, and is part of the fruit of the poisonous tree. Just gonna find out here that my defendants were nothing more than musicians that got caught up in a situation that led them here. That's all, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. All right, Mr. Hall, last call for Mr. Barnes. Is
Your Honor,
Mr. Barnes here at all? Yes. No? Yes?
No, I don't believe so, no.
Okay. All right. So since there are no statements entered by either Sullivan or Hall, we only have the incident report and the evidence, of which I will give you time to speak on.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, I'd first like to bring up the main exhibits, and of course, evidence. And that's mainly going to be Exhibit A, as well as Exhibit C, both Exhibit C1 as well as C2.
Can I just
No.
make sure that both defense and prosecution are speaking as loud as possible? Thank you.
Of course.
Thanks.
Now,
So if you
as-
could just explain Exhibit A, please, to everybody.
First, as seen in Exhibit A, this is going to be Miss Finneghan course, what's actually on her person. We can see that there are 18 bags of marijuana on her person, as well as a multitude of cash, amounting to $10,000 as well.
Okay.
Exhibit C, rather, C1, is going to be, of course, the search of Mr. Walker, the defendant, of course, on his person. There's going to be 28 bags of marijuana, as well as, again, over $10,000 in cash. Now, finally, the main point that the state would like to present in terms of evidence is going to be Exhibits E, so E through 4. All of this, of course, is going to be residue that was actually found on the scene. Of course, that's going to be evidence that there was an actual transportation and sale of marijuana in the area. Of course, that's what was used in order to determine a lawful detainment as well as a search of both defendants. Of course, Exhibit F as well, I forgot to mention, is going to be essentially on the scene, while Exhibits E are going to be, of course, in evidence.
All right. So exhibit F is drug residue, which is found all over the area on the ground. Exhibits E 1 through 4 are evidence that was logged in the crime lab that came back as positive for weed residue. All right. Is there anything else?
Not at this time, Your Honor, no.
Okay. So does the prosecution rest at this time?
Indeed, the prosecution does rest, Your Honor.
Okay. Over to defense, Mr. Vanderburg. If you would like to speak to any of these items, you can, or you can go ahead and call witnesses.
Yes, Your Honor. I actually would want to point out something that's very disconcerting in exhibits C1 and C2. Please make note what is between Mr. Sullivan's evidence bags. It's not water.
Correct.
Your Honor, I find it very disconcerting that an officer active on duty will be lugging around alcohol.
Yo, what's up?
Okay.
Yo, what's up?
Which would prove the more the point of the fact is that perhaps Mr. Sullivan may not have been in his right state of mind when he called upon backup.
Prosecution, do you want to give a rebuttal to this?
Of course, I'd love to, Your Honor. Overall, the presence of appears to be alcohol on an officer's person. Clear, at the very least, speculates that they were drunk or in any sort of way intoxicated while actually acting in the course of their duty. It's not stated anywhere whether this is evidence or not, or whether actually Mr. Sullivan was or was not drunk. However, of course, overall, the evidence will show that that's not necessarily the case.
If I may
Mr.
rebut on that.
Mr. Vanderburg, yeah.
Yes, Your Honor. So, I mean, in this situation here, I just find it, what reasonable officer should be walking around on duty while lugging alcohol? Though I understand is that we can't prove whether or not he was drunk or intoxicated at all. It's just very concerning that I'd like to make the court aware that an officer who is supposed to be enforcing the law and supposed to be a professional at all times while on duty is caught with alcohol on his person, especially alcohol that could probably get him very drunk.
Turner, if I could make one more statement in rebuttal to that.
Sure, go ahead.
Overall, as as the defense just stated, all of that is speculatory. Unless we have clear and concise evidence that the defense is willing to show that this officer was drunk, or in any sort of way this alcohol came into play into this specific case, it's one irrelevant to highly speculatory.
Mr. Vanderburg, do you want to continue arguing this one bottle of tequila?
No, Your Honor, I was just merely wanting to make it aware to the courts that this was on his person as a professional officer.
All right. It is duly noted in the court record. Would you like to speak to any other pieces of evidence that have been brought forward?
Bear with me one moment here while I review that here real quick. No, Your Honor. Although I do wish to, or actually, never mind. I was waiting to see because I have my two clients who wish to be on the stand.
All right. You may proceed then, Mr. Vanderburg.
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Ms. Farrah Finneghan to the stand.
Ma'am, if you just come over to your left, which is my right, and come and stand on the other side of my chair, if you don't mind. If you get nice and close, you'll see that there is a microphone there for you to use, and the bailiff will swear you in.
Alrighty, ma'am. Please raise both hands for me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Perfect. Thank you.
You may proceed, Mr. Vanderburg.
All right, then, Your Honor. Hello, Ms. Finneghan. How are you feeling today?
I'm pretty good.
Okay. Ms. Finneghan, would you like to, from your recount of that unfortunate day that transpired to 2 days, what started out this day in question?
Myself and Jebediah, and also Stephen Thumb, were we were mining earlier in the day and just trying to make some money, tried to survive. And after we were done mining, I received a call about a little party get-together around Jamestown. And so I broke off with them and went to find the party. Did not find the party, but I did come across a taco truck or a food truck. I talked to the guy who was working there, bought some of his goods that he was selling, some pretty good authentic Mexican type food, like burritos and tacos and whatnot. And he was really nice, so I gave him a hefty tip. And then in exchange for the hefty tip and being such a nice customer, I guess, he slipped me some of the bags of weed. And then I proceeded to meet back up with Jebediah and Stephen, and then we went on. We decided to go play some music up in Grapeseed.
Alrighty, and based on that, now when you went up to getting back to the whole situation of the mining, what is it, that you all are actually? Let me rephrase that question.
Take your time.
When you're mining, is that very profitable?
Oh,
Mining?
very, very.
Okay. Now, understand that the money you had on you was quite a lot. Why was it that you weren't able to get it to a bank?
I didn't really think about putting it in the bank. I should have. But we, after we had met back up, we were really excited to go out to Grapeseed and play some music for some people out there, and it just totally slipped my mind.
Okay. Do you recall approximately how much you made off of your mining trip?
I made about probably 10 to 11 grand.
Alrighty. Okay. Now, what made you all decide, or what made you guys decide to go to Grapeseed?
Oh, we wanted to play some country music for the people up there. We have a little group. Wouldn't call it quite a band, but like a little group. Me and Jebediah play guitar, and Steven sings. And so we wanted to go up there and play some music for some people and just have a good time.
Okay. And you wanted to go to Grapeseed for what reason?
To play music.
Oh, no, I mean like...
in fact,
Oh, my apologies. What I mean by that was, why not somewhere in Los Santos?
well, we thought the best place to play like our type of music would be up in the Grapeseed area, more country folk, you know.
All right, I see. Right. So around more people that would appreciate your music.
Correct.
Okay. Alrighty. And now, understanding that in the pictures, like in exhibits A, C, E, and all of, or A, C, and F, that's not right there, Grapeseed. What led? Where was that area you guys were at if you guys weren't in Grapeseed?
We moved a little west because the crowd was getting a little too rambunctious and it was kind of impeding on the flow of traffic. So we moved a little more into like the wooded area and by a big tree that I thought was really nice, and continued to play over there.
Ready? And were the people enjoying your music?
Yes, very much so. They were handing out tips to us, and also we were handing out autographs, which we thought was really shocking. But you know, because we were just playing for fun, and but we were happily handing out our autographs and taking tips and whatnot.
Okay. And was it just money you guys were getting, or I'm assuming, or my apologies, what kind of, I should ask this. What kind of tips were you receiving?
We were receiving monetary tips, as well as a couple people handed us bags of marijuana.
Okay. Now, you said a couple of people handed you marijuana. When did this occur?
When we were playing, they would come up and just throw a tip, and then like under the money, they'd hand a little bag of marijuana under it.
Okay. All right. And let's see. Was it who was the one that was receiving the tips and the marijuana?
Me and Jebediah were mostly, but Jebediah more so because he had the guitar case in front of him. And so they were kind of walking by and just throwing some stuff in, but a couple of them walked up to me and also handed me some as well.
All right then. Okay. Now, getting to the because not knowing you weren't unaware of the situation, officers were observing you. What happened when the police arrived?
We were getting ready to just take like a little break and decide if we wanted to continue playing or not. So we got into the car, and that's when Officer Barnes pulled up and asked us to get out of the car, which all three of us happily obliged.
What happened after you all got out of the car?
We got out of the car, and then about a minute or two later, Trooper Sullivan pulled up as well. And Steven asked if they would like to hear one of our songs that we were playing, and they said sure. And so we played them a song, and right after that, Trooper Sullivan said that we needed to get against the tree and we are being detained, and that he would tell us after we were detained what we were being detained for.
Okay. So he just detained you and then would tell you afterwards.
Yeah. He handcuffed, well, Officer Barnes handcuffed me and Jebediah, and then I believe Trooper Sullivan handcuffed Stephen.
All right. And let's see here. Trying to think here. Did they say what brought them out there?
Trooper Sullivan said that he had received calls of, I guess, drug sales going on, is what we didn't find this out until later when we were in the cells. So at that point, he didn't tell us that he had received calls. All he had said is that he was watching us from on top of a mountain.
Okay. And what time was this, this was all occurring?
It was around 1:30 in the morning.
Okay. And describing, looking at those pictures, or actually, let me ask this rather. Was it, in Los Santos time, was it night or day?
It was very, very night.
I see. Okay. I gotcha. So so you said Trooper Sullivan was able to see you guys in the pitch black.
That is what he claimed. He said he was watching us for about 5 minutes from on top of a mountain.
Okay. And you guys didn't have any campfires or any torches around the area?
No, sir.
Okay. Alrighty. Now, after you were detained and they told you what they detained you for after the fact, what happened then?
After that, Officer Barnes asked me to come over to him, and then he proceeded to search me.
Okay. He didn't say he was frisking you?
No. He just began searching me.
Okay. Would you be able to describe to the court how he was searching you?
Very, I mean, I wouldn't describe it as rough, but quickly, I would say. Like, it was very uncomfortable. I can say that. It made me feel very uneasy.
All right. And I'm sorry to have to bring that up to you. What part of it was making you feel uncomfortable?
Just being touched by a man that I did not know, and not really understanding why I was being searched.
Okay. And for the court's record, can you describe the relations you have with Mr. Walker?
He is my husband.
Okay. So you two are married?
Not in city, but in heart, I guess you would say.
Oh, I see. Alrighty then. Okay. What happened after you were searched?
He placed me in his vehicle.
All right. And then, would you be able to go on to say what happened after that?
I was in the back of his cop car. I could only see what they were doing. I could not hear them because the windows were up.
Okay. Where did they take you?
They took us to the Sandy Shores Police Department.
Okay. What happened at the police station?
We were put into our cells, again searched, and I had my phone and radio removed from me. And we proceeded to sit there pretty much like explaining what we were doing and trying to tell them that we were not guilty because we were not doing what Trooper Sullivan said we were doing.
Okay. Now, going back to the scenario where you were, or to this area where you all were there a lot of people there?
Yes.
Okay. And enough, or I probably
Well,
can't
there was a decent amount of people. I wouldn't say a lot. There was about 10, 15 people around.
Okay. Alrighty. And let's see here. What all was taken from you by Officer Barnes?
The money I had on me, the weed, which I did not know I had that much on me, and that was it when he searched me the first time, and then again when I was placed in the cell, my phone and my radio.
Okay. So your hard-earned money was taken from you.
Yes, sir.
I see. Alrighty. And did you, were you, or sorry, do you remember being Mirandized?
I was Mirandized on the way to the police department by Officer Barnes.
Okay. Were you given a chance to get a lawyer?
He asked me if I would like a lawyer, and I told him that I would, and preferably one that would take, at the time, all three of us. And while we were in the cells, from my understanding, tried to get a hold of a lawyer for the hour and a half we were there, and was not able to get a hold of one.
I see. Okay. What happened after you weren't able to get a lawyer?
We pled not guilty after, again, they tried to tell us to just plead guilty because this was an easy case for them. And we were fined and then released.
So you were being coerced to say guilty?
Yes.
Okay. Did you feel intimidated when they were doing that?
Oh, very much so. Because I felt like I was not guilty. I had done nothing wrong.
Okay. What happened after you said not guilty?
I believe they seemed frustrated after that, and again, they still continued to ask before they charged us with not guilty if we would like to change what we pled, and then proceeded to bring a supervisor down to also get us to say we were guilty.
So they were pressuring you?
Yes.
I see.
They said it was an easy way just to get out, and that we had already done our time served, and that we should just plead guilty to get it over with.
Okay. I see. So they were bribing you with time served just to plead guilty?
Yes, sir.
You're not to object to that.
Yes, sir.
Calls
Your
for
reason?
conclusion. It's highly speculative as well.
Your Honor,
And rebuttal?
yes, my apologies. Your Honor, only a reasonable person would come to that circumstances if they're being pressured by not once, not twice, but 3 times, especially from a high-ranking officer, just to force somebody to change their plea without legal representation.
Who was the high-ranking officer?
I do not remember his name. He only said it once, and I did not hear it.
Your Honor, overall, again to uphold the objection, defense counsel should only be asking questions that actually have the witness give information of what they actually witnessed and saw. The question shouldn't be providing an answer before the witness even gets to answer themselves.
So in regard to the speculation there. I'm actually going to sustain that. But Mr. Vanderburg, I'd like you to move forward with your questioning in regards to the actual charges that have been placed against Ms. Finneghan.
Okay. Ms. Finneghan, did they explain to you why you were being charged with the sale CDS?
They said that they had witnessed us selling the CDS.
Okay. All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Prosecution.
Thank you, Your Honor. How are you today? Miss Finneghan, right?
Yes.
Oh, very nice to meet you. Now, I would like to go a little bit back in your testimony. Earlier today, you testified to meeting a taco truck worker. Is that right?
Yes, it was a taco truck or a food truck.
Okay. Do you know the individual that was actually manning that taco truck? Like what their name was?
I do not. All I know is that he did not sound like he was from San Andreas.
Where did he sound like he was from?
I can't really say, but definitely not our city.
Okay.
And yeah.
All right. Now, how did that interaction go again? Can you walk us through step by step what happened?
Yeah, I was called about a party that might have been happening at around the Jamestown area. After not being able to find said party, I came across the food truck. It was around the same area, and I walked up and had a conversation with the gentleman and bought some of his goods that he was selling, and just passed back and forth some nice compliments on how good the food was, and gave him a hefty tip, and in exchange he gave me some bags of weed.
Okay. Now, was he or were you alone rather? Were one of your friends with you, or you? By this
No,
time?
I was alone.
So you exchanged this tip for how many bags of marijuana?
I can't recall how many bags he gave me, to be honest.
So it's more than you can recall?
Correct.
Okay, so he gives you a large amount of marijuana bags. And then from there, you said you went up to was it the grapeseed area?
No, I after I gotten some food, I met back up with Jebediah and Stephen, and then from there we decided to go up to the grapeseed area to practice our music.
Okay, so you met with the previous co-defendant. This was Mr. Thumbs, and then your current co-defendant, which was Mr. Walker. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Those are the only two that you trekked up to. You said the grapeseed area with, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, once you actually got there, who was actually playing music? And first, what type of music was it?
It was country music. Me and Jebediah were playing guitar, and Stephen was singing.
You know how to play guitar?
I do.
Okay. Now, can you, I guess, explain what the 4 strings in a guitar are called?
There are 6 strings in a guitar.
Oh, okay.
Would you like me to?
Yeah, please, elaborate.
There are 6 strings. They are E, A, D, G, B, and E.
I see. Now, were there any specific songs that you were playing?
Any specific songs?
Yeah.
Country songs. You know, just the one we were really practicing was "What a Wonderful World" by Louis Armstrong, and that is also the one we played for the trooper and officer.
Okay. Now, you were in the wilderness at this point, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, this was away from any sort of city or populated area, right?
It was populated
Or is it populated?
by the people that live in Grapeseed and around that area.
You said you were in the wilderness, though, right?
We weren't necessarily too far from the grapeseed area. They had followed us from the fruit stand that we were at in grapeseed.
Okay. So, around how far away were you from the next largest population center in Grapeseed? Is it like a mile, 2 miles?
Like a quarter of a mile, I would say, or a half a mile.
Half a mile. Okay. So, I'd imagine you were being very loud, right?
While we were playing our music?
Yeah.
Sure.
So, being loud up in the woods, and then you said there were other people that came to visit you up there. Is that right?
Other people that were interested in hearing our music, yes.
Okay. Do you know any of those people?
No.
Would you be able to recall what they look like?
They looked like everyday country folk.
Okay. Would you be able to point any of them out in a lineup if you were to have to do so?
Sure.
You would be able to?
Sure, absolutely.
Can you recall, I guess, what one of them was wearing?
One of them was wearing some overalls and some boots.
Okay. Now, that gentleman, did he walk up? Did he start talking about music, or did you converse with him at all?
I said hello and thank you for coming to our little impromptu show, and yeah,
Okay. Did he say anything back?
he did not.
Okay, so he just sort of like stared at you.
I think he was just enthralled by our music.
I see. Okay, so he was just looking at you, completely entranced. Is that the same with the other individuals that were surrounding you?
No, a couple of them were dancing and bobbing their heads, kind of trying to sing along too. It was kind of nice.
Did you converse with any of them?
No, I did not.
Okay. Now, previously in your testimony, you stated to these individuals walking up, handing you money, as well as bags of marijuana. Is that
Objection,
still
Your
true?
Honor.
What is your objection?
He said two. My client said a couple, which can be taken as two, or could be more, depending on someone's
Uh,
perspective.
Okay, well, at this case, I'll ask Mr. Hall to rephrase his question.
Okay. Now, these individuals, you said previously in your testimony that they ended up handing you bags of marijuana as well as money. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, can you call, let's say for one of these individuals, how many bags of marijuana as well as money did they hand to you?
They would only hand me one bag of marijuana, and it would vary between probably $20 and $25.
Okay. And how many people did this for you?
Only a few. They were mostly going over to Mr. Walker's guitar case.
Can you give me an exact number of bags of marijuana that they handed you?
So, that would be very hard to remember. I was more focused on playing guitar and singing the backup vocals.
Well, I'd imagine that you'd have to stop playing the music to actually collect this marijuana and money, correct?
Oh no, they were kind of
Objection,
just.
Your Honor. That's a speculative question.
I'm not sure if it's speculative, it's more leading.
Yeah.
If you could rephrase your question, Mr.
Well, Your
Hall.
Honor, it's a cross-examination. It's my understanding that I can leave the witness at this time.
Also, some of these have been spoken about already.
Well, Your Honor, I don't believe it was previously testified to exactly how many bags or how many people rather actually handed her these bags and money.
This is correct. She hasn't actually said the amount of people or bags. So let me see. Let's overrule, and if you would just continue with a direct question here.
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes,
Mr.
please. Yes, please.
once more, how many of these individuals handed you bags of marijuana and or money?
About, if I can remember correctly, 5 or 6.
5 or 6. Okay. Now, in that time, you had to stop playing your guitar and actually singing to collect those bags of money, bags and money, correct?
No, not every time. Some of them would just kind of slip it in my pocket, or they would actually stick it in the hole of my guitar.
Okay. Now, at the end of this singing, would you like to call it a festival?
No, it was definitely not a festival. It was just us 3 up there having some fun.
All right. So at the end of this get together, how many bags of marijuana did you have on your person?
I did not know until it was removed from me. I was not keeping count of what I was receiving as far as the weed.
Now, are you at all aware, I suppose, of how possession law works in this state, Miss Finnegan?
I was made aware when we were in the cells.
Have you ever been charged or convicted with a crime before that incident?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, on the, let me phrase it this way, I suppose. Did you know at the time that marijuana was illegal to possess?
I did not. I had assumed that it was legal to possess for recreational use.
Okay. Now, I'm assuming then that you never actually told the cops when they arrived that you wanted to hand over the amount of drugs that you had on you.
I was never given an opportunity to speak to the cops directly about it.
Now, again, just to suppose to tidy this up, from the officers, or anyone's point of view, when these individuals would be giving you the bags of marijuana and money, it would look like they are handing you something, correct?
I suppose so.
Okay. Now, I would like to back up a little bit. You testified to working in the mines, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, can you state who your boss is?
At the time, I did not have a boss. I was working for myself and selling to the resource center. And yeah, that's what we were all doing.
Okay. Now, do you get paid in cash?
At the resource center?
Well, overall for your job.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Now, in this particular day, right, how much did you make? And how much did you have on you from this mining job?
I made
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered. But
I don't believe this was asked prior.
I did ask how much she made.
Just give me one moment to look at my notes, please.
Of course.
Yes, she answered with between 10 and 11,000.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
between 10 and 11,000, I can withdraw, Your Honor. So, Miss Finnegan, you made between $10,000 and $11,000. Can you
Correct.
come up with an approximate amount of money that these individuals actually provided to you on the
I
scene of the
didn't.
festival?
I was not keeping count.
Now, do you have any enemies?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, all of these people at the get-together, they all were having a good time, is what you testified to, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you said you were pretty far removed from the next population center?
I wouldn't say pretty far. I'd say it wasn't terribly far. Like I believe I said, about a quarter to half mile.
Alright, so far enough that you probably weren't bothering people, right?
Sorry, say that again?
Far enough away that you more than likely weren't bothering people with your actions, right?
No.
Now, ask then, do you know anyone that would want to call 911 on you falsely?
Absolutely not.
Oh, who called 911 on you?
Objection, Your Honor. There's no evidence to a 911 call.
Rebuttal, Mr. Hall?
Your Honor, I would like to point to the statement from Officer Sullivan where he specifically states that he received a 911 call.
Your Honor, the police reports is considered hearsay from my understanding in the court procedures manual. It's not actually counted as a statement from the officer.
This is correct. It is an incident report. And unfortunately, we did not get a copy of the dispatch. So at this point, I am going to overrule. So Mr. Hall, you'll move on from this question.
Of course. Now, you stated previously that the same thing that was happening with you, so of course in regards to these individuals handing you drugs and money, was happening to your husband, correct, Mr. Walker?
Correct.
Okay. Were you paying much attention to what your husband was doing, or you mainly focused on yourself?
I was mainly focused on how I was performing and making sure that I was singing in tune with Stephen.
Overall, how well do you know your husband?
Very well.
Okay. That's all going to be the questions from the state at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Vanderburg, did you have anything else that you wanted to ask that has not been asked before?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Finneghan, you are able to step down, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Vanderburg, your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Jebediah Walker to the stand.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Just come and stand right next to my chair here. You'll see a microphone in front of you. Bailiff.
Alrighty, perfect. Please raise both hands for me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Vanderburg, floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hello, Mr. Walker. How are you feeling today?
Fantastic.
Alrighty. Now, we did hear from what your wife had stated to the court. Tell us from your perspective what happened that night in question.
All right. So, as she had stated, from my point of view, we were out mining. Me, Stephen, and Farrah. We ended up filling up our trucks and going down. We smelted everything together, took it down to the resource center, and sold it off.
Okay. What kind of trucks were you driving?
I was driving a Benson.
Okay. All right. And how much do these trucks hold as far as weight?
Roughly around 600.
Okay. All right. Would this be enough to make a decent profit or quite a bit of money? Or actually, let me rephrase that question. My apologies, Your Honor. Is this truck large enough to make quite a bit of money?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, I made a decent amount that day selling to the resource center, and just recently I learned how to do it even better and, doing pretty well for myself.
Amazing. Is this your main source of income?
That is correct.
Okay. On that date, how much did you approximately make? Sorry.
Well, after selling to the resource center, I do believe I had around 10 grand.
Okay. All right. Now, after you were done mining and selling your resources to the resource shop to earn your living, what happened after that?
Farrah got a phone call and decided to split off and said she was going to go hang out with a friend. And then that is when me and Steven decided that after working for so long, we'd go and get some burgers. So we tried to find a place open to get some burgers and get some brunch.
I see. Alrighty. When did you meet up with Miss Finneghan again?
I'd say it was around an hour after we broke off.
Okay. What was the local time like?
Oh, it was probably pushing close to dusk. Maybe, 5:30.
Okay. And what happened after you all met up?
We talked for a while. Farrah explained to us that she had gotten some weed from one of her friends, and I smoked a little bit of it, and then we kind of got the idea to go have some fun, and we'd been practicing doing a rendition of What a Wonderful World, and our own kind of personal style, whereas the lead vocals were sung in the impersonation of Kermit the Frog, just for fun, trying to have some good times. Might have been a poor judgment call, I don't know, but we decided we'd go up to Grapeseed and give our shot at, trying to have some fun and entertain people, get a laugh.
Okay. So you were in Grapeseed. Do you know where in Grapeseed you were at?
Yeah, we were actually at the fruit stand at the corner of oh gosh, I can't remember. We were basically right near the like shopping center area, right before right above the lake.
I see. Okay. Alrighty. Approximately how long were you there?
Oh, I'd say maybe somewhere close to an hour playing.
Okay. All right. And by this time, was it still dusk?
It was getting dark out.
Okay. All right. Where did you guys move on to?
We moved like to the west down this dirt path, probably about maybe I don't know, like a 3 or 4 minute walk away from the city, just to kind of get out of the road, because some of the like some of the people who was watching us play and listening to us, they were getting rambunctious and dancing, and they were like moving into the street, and traffic was getting wild. So we were like, yeah, this is gonna get crazy, so we moved.
Okay. So you were looking out for the safety of the people.
That is correct, yeah, and ourselves.
I see. Okay. Well, now this puts you out in that wooded area where these were exhibits A, C, and F were taken. Describe what was going on then.
Yeah, so we had gone to this new location, right down a dirt road that looked highly traveled. And we decided, we'd stand off of that road a little bit next to some trees and continue playing. And some of the locals had followed us over that way. And we continued to play our songs. We had a little group of people, around anywhere from 5 to 10 people at a time. And every few minutes, some would leave and some would join. I had my guitar case on the ground, and every once in a while, people would throw in, a little handful of like crumpled up bills. Every once in a while, there'd be people that came through and threw like, a handful of stuff in, change and bills and something else. And it continued that way until well into the night.
Okay. Did you guys have any lights or anything when you were playing?
No, sir, we were playing under the light of the stars, being all picturesque. It was pretty beautiful, to be honest.
All right, so it was pitch black as well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, moving on to this. Now, it was. How did you get in possession of some weed?
Well, once we had had a second to breathe, we all sat down in the car and we were talking about what our next plan was, if we were going to continue playing or if we were going to head home for the night. I had taken and quickly grabbed everything out of the guitar case so I could set my guitar down in it, and I kind of just stuffed all of it in my pockets. I did notice that there were bags of weed, and I didn't think too much of it, so I just kept them.
Okay. Did you know it was weed?
Yes.
How did you come to that conclusion?
One, they were in like individual little baggies, and I do smoke myself, so I know what the substance looks like, and also it gave off an aroma.
Okay. All right. Do you know who gave you this weed?
Out of all the people coming through, to my conclusion, there was a group of like, I don't want to be rude to people, but they kind of looked like hippies. They were all walking around and they were enjoying the music, and I saw those were the group of people who threw the handful of like cash and coin and everything in it all at the same time. And I can only assume that it was them who threw it in there.
Okay. Can you describe these quote-unquote hippies?
Yes, there were around 3 of them. They all had like some matty, dread-looking hair, wearing shorts and flip-flops, and like some tie-dye shirts. And they too, kind of when their presence got close to me to put the stuff in the bag, I could tell they had been, token, smoking.
I see. Okay. Now, at this point here, you had been playing for a while, and Officer Barnes shows up. What happened then? Or what was going on at that point, I should say?
Okay, so we were sitting in the car talking about whether or not we wanted to leave or stay. And that is when we heard a car coming down the path behind us from our left. And I turned around, looked out, and as soon as Officer Barnes rolled up in his squad car, he shouted out, "Stay in the car." No, he told us to get out of the car. I'm sorry. I was incorrect on that statement. He told us to get out of the car and asked us what we were doing. And we did so.
Okay. All right. And at this point here, as for what was stated in your wife's situation, let's actually go by from your perspective. My apologies, because you can't. What happened after that when Officer Barnes told you to get out of your car?
We stepped out of the vehicle, and I had come around to see what was going on. He had asked us what we were doing, and we were explaining to him that we were out there playing music as the other officer, Mr. Sullivan, rolled up. And then Officer Sullivan got out of the car and was figuring out what was going on, and we were telling him, we're out here playing music. And they kind of seemed like in disbelief that we'd be playing music. So Stephen asked them if, in his own words, actually, he said, "You want us to play as a ditty?" And the officers looked at each other and said, "Yeah." And then Sullivan said he hasn't heard good music, so he'd love to. And then we ended up playing our rendition of What a Wonderful World for him.
Okay. And what happened after that?
As soon as we were done playing, Officer Sullivan asked us to step up behind us and turn around and get up against the tree. And he told us that we were being detained. And after he placed us all into cuffs, he told us that we were actually being arrested for selling marijuana.
Okay. Did he say how he came to that conclusion?
Yes, he said he was on top. He had been watching us for around 5 minutes from on top of a mountain. And he saw us handing things off to people.
Okay. And as you stated, this was pitch black and you were playing under the stars.
Correct.
Was it a full moon out?
Honestly, with the tree coverage, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. All right. Were you able to see in front of yourself?
A few feet.
Can you say exactly what a few feet would be, just for perspective?
Like an arm's length.
Okay. All right then. So an arm's length is all you could see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Did you have your glasses on or off?
On.
Okay. Alrighty. Let's see. So officer. Okay. What happened next after you were detained and told what you're being arrested for?
So we were handcuffed, and then Officer Barnes had asked Farrah to walk over towards his squad car away from me and Steven. And at that time, Steven was getting searched by Mr. Sullivan, while Farrah was getting searched by Mr. Barnes. And then after they were done being searched, Barnes came over and searched me and took my 10 grand and the weed bags off me.
And again, this 10 grand's your hard-earned cash.
That is correct.
Now, you said you were receiving change and tips in your guitar case.
Yeah.
What happened to that money?
It was all stuffed in my pocket with the rest of the money I had.
Okay, I see. All right. Try to think here how to go about this now. All right. You said your wife was called out of, it was taken out of your sight.
That
correct?
is correct. Yeah, she was asked to step away from the tree and over towards the other officer squad car.
How did that make you feel as a husband?
Well, honestly, I was pretty shaken up by the whole situation. So I was a little worried why, like, she'd want to be, like, they'd take her away from where, like, we were. If they were going to do me, like, if they were going to search me and Steven next to each other, why did they take my wife away from, like, us so we couldn't see what was going on, you know?
I see. All right. Like her, did you feel uncomfortable? Or actually, my apologies. Your Honor, actually, I like that question stricken.
Okay.
How would that make you? How did that make you feel when your wife was out of your sight?
Oh, we just did this question.
Oh, my apologies. My apologies, Your Honor. What happened after you were searched?
After I was searched, I was put into Officer Sullivan's truck. And then shortly after that, Steven was put in the truck beside me, and Farrah was placed into the cop's cruiser. When Steven was sat next to me, the officers then began walking around the area and taking pictures and shining their flashlights around. And that is when I had brought up the fact that I saw the officer take my money out of my pocket, and I was a little disgruntled about that. So, like, at that point, Steven had asked Officer Barnes to come over to the window, and Officer Barnes kind of cracked it and asked us what was going on. And we told him at that point that, like, we didn't know what was going on and we wanted a lawyer.
Okay. What happened after that?
He said he would do his best to get us a lawyer, and he went back and talked to Mr. Sullivan for a while. And then Sullivan got into the truck with us, Barnes got into the squad car, and we all started heading towards Sandy.
Okay. And based on what we had heard from your wife's testimony, what happened with you in the cells?
When I got to the cells, I was placed in between both Farrah and Steven. They begun, like, asking me questions and, you know, saying, you know, like, we have you dead to rights. Why are you trying to, like, say that you're just out there playing music when we saw you selling drugs? And they basically just kept doing that until the point where it seemed like they were getting agitated. And then they asked me my plea, and I said not guilty. And that is when I believe their supervisor, a detective, had come in and began asking us the same questions that the other officers did.
Okay. Were you, because I know your wife said she was Mirandized. Were you Mirandized?
Actually, during the police ride over to Sandy from where we stopped, Mr. Sullivan did state, and this is word for word, and it kind of caught me off guard, which is why I want to bring it up. He said, "I normally don't Mirandize people, but for you guys, I'll go ahead and do it." And then he read us our Miranda rights in the ride back.
Okay. How did that statement make you feel?
Very uneasy. It kind of felt like at that moment maybe things weren't being handled correctly, and I kind of felt that my rights were almost the subject of like a laughing matter.
Okay. So you were Mirandized, or no? Let me get this in order. You said Stephen had asked for, or who asked for the attorney?
Stephen asked for attorney.
Okay. So Stephen asked for an attorney. You were Mirandized, or sorry, you both were Mirandized,
Mm-hmm.
and yet police questioned you?
Yes. They did note multiple times that they were searching for an attorney, but they weren't getting any calls. But I couldn't verify like if they were actually like calling anyone, because every time they went to make a call for an attorney, they'd leave the room at the cells.
Okay. And you said they were trying to make you change your plea, or what was going on with that? You said you pled not guilty.
I did.
What was going on in that situation?
Mr. Vanderburg, I know you have a lot of questions, but you're
Yes, sir.
compounding sentences. Just ask the defendant here more direct questions, if you don't mind.
Yes, Your Honor. Did they try to make you change your plea?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that question. Overall, this
Yes.
witness can actually speculate as to what the officers were trying to do.
Your Honor, it's
Yes, rebuttal.
Your Honor, it's just only common sense from his perspective what he would be feeling. It's his person and his own opinion on how he was in his
Okay.
sense of the situation.
And his feelings are helpful in regard to
Feeling pressured, Your Honor.
okay. I'm going to overrule that at this moment. I am going to ask you to move forward with your questioning, though we're now in the cells. So
Yes, Your Honor.
continue.
Okay. You said that, okay, going back to the situation, you said a detective came down to the cells?
Yes.
Okay.
He was standing in front of me when he was talking to the lot of us. So I think his name was Detective Stansford, something along those lines.
I see. Did he ask you any questions?
Yes.
Do you recall any of those questions?
He basically asked us to recount all the information that had been asked from us from Barnes and Sullivan so that he could be caught up on what was going on.
Okay. Your Honor, I have no further questions, and I apologize for asking.
No,
questions
you're
about
fine.
too many. Okay.
You're fine. All right. Thank you, Mr. Vanderburg. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well there, Mr. Walker. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
That's very good to hear. Now, earlier in your testimony, you were talking about playing guitar in a get-together. Or were you singing?
No, I played the guitar.
You were playing the guitar. Okay. Now, during that session, you also testified to individuals coming to see you play. Is that right?
Yes, there were bystanders that would come and watch and listen.
Now, did those bystanders, they give you anything?
Not directly, no.
Explain what you mean by not directly.
Everything they would, I guess what you would call donate. Excuse me a second, there's a frog in my throat.
Of course.
Sorry about that.
Sure, not a problem. So, again, you were saying how there are individuals, they were giving you items, is that right?
No. So I had my guitar case sitting in front of me after everything had happened over in front of the fruit stand. I decided to place my guitar case in front of me so that people could just drop tips or anything in that if they felt the need to.
Okay, so already, you left it open. Did you tell them to put things in the case, or
No.
no? Okay, so the guitar case was left open. These individuals, they dropped things in your guitar. Is that right?
In the guitar case, yes.
Okay. Can you run me through an exact list of what they dropped in your guitar case?
From
Versus
what I
what-
could. Sorry, go ahead.
What did they put in the case versus what was already there?
The case was empty. And afterwards, from what I could tell, there was money, change, and bags of weed in the case after I thoroughly searched it after the fact.
Okay, so you took everything out of the case, right?
That is correct.
Right, you just put it in your pockets?
Yep.
All right, and you thoroughly searched the case, you said?
Yes.
Okay, took everything out. Got it. So did you at any point tally to see what you actually took from the case?
At the point that I had taken everything from the case was right at the point where Barnes was starting to roll up on us, and I hadn't gone through and recollected everything in my pockets at that time, but I did know that the things I put in my pockets were money and weed.
So I would like for you to now reference exhibits C1 and C2, if you could.
Yes, sir. Hold on. All right, I can see them on the screen.
All right. Now, is it true or is it false that is you in that picture, in those two pictures?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is
it
true.
All right. Is it true or false that you had, 28 bags of marijuana on your person in those photos?
That is true.
Is it also true that you had over $10,000 in cash on your person?
That is also true.
Now, can you elaborate exactly why you had both of those items on your person?
The weed must have been a collection that I got out of the box, and the money I had on me must have been a collaborative amount based on what I had brought from mining and what I got out of the box as well.
Okay. Now, you actually, I'd assume you're right by your guitar case, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you would have seen these individuals putting items into your case, right?
That is correct. Yeah, it was at my feet.
Okay. So you saw them put in the bags of marijuana as well as the money into your case.
Well, I wasn't actually watching them put the stuff in my case. I just noted that, hey, someone walked over here and dropped something in the case.
Okay. And this was all in exchange for you providing your musical services, is that right?
I believe so. Gratitude, making their day a little brighter.
Yeah, so they, tipped you some money. They gave you some weed in exchange for that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Vanderburg, are there any questions that have not been asked that you would like to ask your witness?
No, Your Honor.
All right, so you may leave the bench at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Vanderburg, any other witnesses or anything else you'd like to talk about?
No, Your Honor. At this point, defense rests.
All right, so the defense rests and the prosecution has rested. All the items of evidence have been discussed that were admissible. At this time, we are going to enter into closing statements. After closing statements, myself and Judge White will take a 2 to 5 minute recess. So we will begin with Mr. Hall, please.
Actually, Your Honor, if I may we break for recess?
Now?
Yes, Your Honor, to go over everything on our end before coming up with closings.
I would ask this to be a brief recess if possible.
Then I'm going to give a 2-minute brief recess for everyone to stretch their legs, get some food and water. 2 minutes on the clock.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, I'm just, I know we're all getting a little restless, so I'm going to be calling court back into session. Apologies, bailiff.
No worries.
I'm just taking control. All right, Mr. Hall, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. May I approach, Your Honor?
Woo. Yes, please. The well is yours. Yep. Okay.
Sorry,
yep,
just having a little
yep,
bit of
that's
trouble.
fine. Yep. Okay.
Don't hurt yourself there, Oliver.
Ladies and gentlemen, Your Honor. Now, we have heard in this case that not much is being contested, neither from the state nor from the defense, actually. We've seen from the testimony and evidence provided, even of course by the defendants themselves, that one, both of the defendants are guilty of their respective charges of possession of marijuana. Now, a state is under oath by both defendants. They both admitted to willfully and intentionally being in possession of over the legal limit of marijuana. Now, ignorance isn't a crime, isn't rather a defense to a crime in this state. Just because the defendants didn't actually know that they were over the possession of the legal limit of marijuana, that doesn't make essentially their possession any more lawful. So that's number one. Number two is that, as stated, of course, by the testimony, as we've seen through this trial, the defendants are guilty of the sale of marijuana. Now, of course, we even heard this from the defendants themselves in, of course, in Ms. Finneghan's testimony. She stated how she was transferring marijuana in exchange for a tip with the driver of a taco truck. And then we, of course, heard it from both defendants that they both were exchanging the service of providing music for marijuana. Now, if we were to take the defendant's story at face value, that they were actually going to play music in the wild, in the wilderness, they were doing it for free, let's say, and that they didn't have any sort of plans to sell marijuana. Even then, we have learned and we have seen that's not actually the case, right? We know even through that story, they still sold and were still a party of the sale of controlled dangerous substances. Now, the crime of sale of controlled dangerous substances, of course, is as follows. Sale of CDS, a quote-unquote handoff of CDS witnessed by a law enforcement officer. Now, this law doesn't actually state what party you have to be. Now, that in it of itself, even if we were going with the defendant's own story, they are guilty of sale of controlled dangerous substances. They were the receiving party of these controlled dangerous substances. They accepted the controlled dangerous substances in exchange for their own service. However, the evidence shows a different story, and then that's not actually the party that they were in this sale. We've seen that the defendants were actually the issuing party of the sale of controlled dangerous substances. We know from, of course, the evidence, the statements submitted, that they were the ones to actually perform the handoffs. And of course, they themselves under oath admitted that they were a part of a handoff. Now, the other evidence that, of course, is and has been presented is the one residue that was found on the scene. Of course, the officers, should they have been here, you would have heard them state that residue, that is a product that can be left behind after the actual sale of narcotics. And that's what happened in this specific case. Unfortunately, they were not here to say that themselves, but that is what actually happened. Further evidence to show that there was a sale was, of course, the amount of marijuana that both defendants had on them. 18 and 28 bags of marijuana are not something that, you will receive from playing music in the middle of nowhere. It is what you bring to actually sell marijuana to individuals in a secluded location. Now, unfortunately, this time, these specific defendants, luckily, were apprehended by law enforcement because of a good Samaritan that called 911. But under any sort of situation, you do not find an individual in the middle of nowhere making handoffs with another person with a copious amount of drugs on them, a copious amount of money on them, and find that it is not a sale of drugs, because it is. Not only that, but the other evidence that we have heard today proves beyond a reasonable doubt that both the defendants are guilty of possession of marijuana as well as the sale of marijuana. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Vanderburg, the floor is yours.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor and people of the court, despite what the prosecution wants the court to believe in the great people of the state, the fact remains is there is no proof that a 911 call was done. Now, had the officers done their duties and wanted to fully incriminate my clients, I would think they'd want to at least take pictures of a 911 call for records, or at least pull the records up. Now, in regards to this, do keep in mind, both my clients said it was really dark out. And from what Jebediah, my client, had said, is that he could not see no more than an arm's length in front of him. And this was, again, would have been 5 minutes, I guess, before the officer, or basically around the time the officers would have shown up, by the time that he was still only able to see an arm's length in front of him. Now, time doesn't move quickly or instantly for rays of sunshine to come out of nowhere for Officer Sullivan to have reportedly seen these handoffs. Because had he said that these were 5 minutes before, or he'd been watching for 5 minutes before he'd gone down there, as he said, it would have been very hard for him, because both my clients said it was dark out. And they were both playing under the sun. Now, of course, we don't know what the phase of the moon was, but even at a full moon, it'd still be hard to see at night. Your Honor and people of the court, my clients are hardworking miners, freelance prospectors, mind you, is the proper term. Now, I understand, the law says a sale of CDS, but it says a handoff witnessed by an LEO. That is the only way these charges can be applied. Now, Your Honors, and given respect to the prosecution, we're not officers. We're not, or law enforcement officers. Mind you, if the court understands that we're not members of a police department, as what law enforcement officers are supposed to be designated. I understand the law says sale of CDS, but doesn't specifically say the type of sale, whether you are the recipient or the seller. Although a reasonable person would see that law as saying the person selling. Does that mean that now anyone, even if they wrongfully receive this product, are also going to be charged with it? That's where possession comes into play, not sale. I understand that they found drug residue on the ground, sure. But from the testimony of my client, Jebediah Walker, there were a group of individuals who did come and deliver or tip them some bags of weed, which at that point could have been right where that drug residue was laid. Now, of course, the officers didn't take any pictures or ask them or try to ask them where they were standing at the time. So it's hard to say where they were, because from my understanding, that car in Exhibit F, the one to the far left of Trooper Sullivan, that's my client's car. Now, from my understanding, they were in their car. Again, they did not ask them where were they standing when they played. The state or the prosecution wants the courts to believe that an officer who is not superhuman nor an owl is able to see 3 people doing exchanges in the dark. That, to me, Your Honor, that's ludicrous. To expect a trooper to be able to see in the pitch black of a handoff. And for the fact is, again, there's no 911 call. So there's no reason for the troopers to be up there other than making it look like they're doing nothing but watching my clients with no reasonable suspicion or probable cause. Of course, the prosecution says there were 911 calls, but again, no evidence. No sale happened in the situation. Now, again, my clients did say they were in Grapeseed originally, but they moved off for the sake of the people, so they weren't impeding traffic. They were doing the city a good deed by moving away for the safety so traffic can resume and they can go off to an area that was more secluded and not get in the way of traffic or commerce. The fact of the matter is, Your Honor, also getting to the point where they were arrested. They were told they weren't going to be, from the testimony of both my clients, they were not going to be told what they're arrested for until afterwards. They were Mirandized on their way. One of my clients was, and the other one had a very disgruntled or a very disconcerting statement from an officer that made him feel even more uncomfortable even after he was separated visually from his wife. And as from the testimony of Ms. Finneghan, she was uncomfortably searched by a male officer. Ethically, that is wrong. There's nowhere the officers did they ever state that they offered to send a female officer to search my client. Rather, he took it upon himself to move my client out of the sight of her husband and out of the sight of Mr. Thumb just to be searched away in private. And this is a very touchy area. Now then, getting back to the cell, now going to the cells, my clients did already ask for an attorney, and they were already Mirandized, which means if they said not guilty or they wanted an attorney, those officers shouldn't have opened their mouths at all. And trying to convince them and tell them that this is too easy, you ought to change your mind, you ought to do this, you ought to do that, that is the definition of peer pressure, a childish move from professionals who are supposed to uphold the law and uphold Miranda versus Arizona. When they say, I want an attorney, that means those officers shut their mouths and stay away from those individuals, or just proceed with saying, okay, because they have the right to an attorney up until trial. That is how it is supposed to go. So if they wanted to be firm that they want to say not guilty, that should have been the end of it. Then they would have waited for their attorney and bring it where we are now. However, based on the testimony of both of my clients, they were told not once, not twice, but thrice, 3 times to change their plea. And it would be easier for them just to take it and they can have their time served and go. Your Honors, this is an egregious move by the law enforcements. They did this to my clients. Did they find substances that they weren't supposed to have? Yes. Did they have probable cause or reasonable suspicion? No, because no evidence shows they did. So reasonable suspicion and probable cause gone because they have no reason to be there. Your Honors, I'd like to point out that this is the evidence that was found on them is fruit of the poisonous tree. That is all, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderburg. We'll be taking a super quick, as fast as we can, 5-minute recess. We'll be giving a verdict in exactly, hopefully less than 5 minutes. We'll be right back.
All rise. District Court is back in session. Honorable Judge York and Judge White presiding.
All right, thank you. You may be seated, except for the defendants, or you can fall on the ground, whichever one is more comfortable. All right, ladies and gentlemen, in regard to San Andreas versus Farrah Finneghan and Mr. Walker, I have a few things I'd like to say first to set a few things straight. The first thing is that due to testimony, Miss Finneghan willingly accepted drugs from a quote-unquote taco truck. She willingly tipped the man for, as her words said, a large amount of drugs. Both Mr. Walker and Miss Finneghan stated, Miss Finneghan stated that she did not know the legal amount of drugs to have that she could carry. However, of course, not knowing the law is not an excuse, and she seems like quite a smart lady. Mr. Walker stated that Miss Finneghan came back with the drugs and he smoked some. I would like to also speak to the statement of the can't see because at arm's length. From what I can see, Mr. Walker has slightly tinted glasses on. So if you were wearing glasses that evening, that may have impaired your sight. However, Miss Finneghan stated that she saw people dancing and enjoying the music. So maybe there was a little bit more light than we suspected at the scene of the crime. I would also like to state that officers do not need a dispatch call to patrol areas. However, both Mr. Walker and Miss Finneghan stated that this was in a somewhat isolated or remote area. In order for an officer to go to a remote area, there has to be some kind of prompting. The incident report states that they were responding to something. However, there was no proof supplied by the dispatch call to show that. And lastly, I'd like to speak to the situation of Miranda Rights. Mr. Vanderburg, do you know the statement of Miranda?
Yes, Your Honor.
What is the first portion?
You have the right to remain silent.
Correct. You have the right to remain silent. We all know that in order sometimes to get information, an officer will speak. However, once the Miranda rights have been read, whatever the suspects at that time decide to say of their own free will, after being asked, you have the right to remain silent, the next portion says anything you say can and will be used in a court of law. However, absolutely nothing that Miss Finneghan and Mr. Walker said has been used today in this court of law. Okay, so let me move on to sentencing. Miss Finneghan.
Yes, Your Honor.
In the charge of PC 2203, possession of CDS with intent to traffic, I find you guilty. In regard to PC 2221, sale of CDS, I find you not guilty. Mr. Walker. In regard to PC 2204, possession of CDS, you actually had the second step up of the legal amounts, which was over 20 bags. I find you guilty. In regard to PC 2221, sale of CDS, I find you not guilty. There was not enough proof, unfortunately, due to the officers not being able to be here. And I completely understand that Mr. Sullivan is deployed with the military. I do not hold him at fault for this. Mr. Barnes is also not here, and if he had provided testimony, maybe the outcome would have been different. That is the verdict today. Ladies and gentlemen, court is adjourned.
Thank you,
Thank
Your
you, Your
Honor.
Honor.
Thank you.
Okay.